Hey everybody, PC Outcast here, back with more Everlasting Summer, continuing along the terror that is Miku's route. I awoke in complete darkness. My whole body ached, especially my legs, but somehow I still managed to get up, leaning against the wall. Sound of the Yolanas was nowhere to be heard, which calmed me down a little. I called out in a thin voice, "Masha! Lena!" I heard a movement nearby and felt someone gripping my leg. I instinctively jumped back, but at the same moment, a faint voice came from below. "Are we still alive?" "Seems like it." I helped Masha get up. Suddenly, a bright light fired up a couple of meters away from me. I leaned against the wall, trembling, but immediately realized that it was Lena who had turned on a flashlight. Where did that come from? "Where did you get that?" Lena came closer, limping. "I took it just in case, yesterday." Took the flashlight from her and shone it around. We were in some kind of tunnel. The walls were lined with wires. Unlit lamps were hanging from the ceiling. Where are we? I don't know. Looks like some kind of bomb shelter. I looked up and saw a pretty formidable hole, beyond which one could barely make out the hallway of the old camp building. The floor had probably rotted with age, and we fell down here. At first glance, there was no way to climb back, too high, and there's nothing to grab. So what is there? Go further? I asked, not really expecting an answer. I don't know, but we'll have to check. I shone the flashlight ahead of us and took a few uncertain steps. My whole body was covered in bruises and scratches, but I could still walk. Ouch! Lena cried out behind me. "What is it?" "I think I sprained my ankle." I was honestly expecting the next line to be something cliched like, "Leave me behind, I'll only be a burden," but of course, she could never say that. "Okay, lean on me." Lena on me. Oh. I went over to Lena and offered her my shoulder. Soon enough, the stone walls gave way to wooden ones, and we ended up in some sort of mine. "Let's have a break," Masha begged. I carefully lowered Lena to the ground and sat down nearby. Well, at least those monsters are nowhere to be seen. But for how long? I sighed heavily and closed my eyes. "What do you think is going on here?" Masha's voice was trembling, but she still sounded more or less confident. Looks like she's so exhausted and devastated that there's just no strength left for fear. I don't know. And honestly, I don't want to know. But we're gonna get out? Definitely. I couldn't see her face, but I was sure that she's smiling. Suddenly the flashlight blinked and went out. I hit it with my palm several times. Mine's walls lit up with a dim light once again, and I immediately realized that something was wrong. Lena was nowhere to be found. "Lena's disappeared," I whispered. "What?" Masha grabbed me by the sleeve and stared at the spot where Lena had been sitting a moment ago. "How? But how?" She started to cry quietly. "We will die. We will definitely die." I also very much wanted to burst into tears. Darkness surrounded us all around, closing in. The flashlight was gradually dying, and with it our chances of survival. "Get up. Time to go. The battery will die soon." A couple of minutes later we came to a fork. "What the hell? Is this some kind of labyrinth too?" I hissed under my breath. "Let's go back, maybe?" "No. No way." Masha pressed against me even harder. "Where to, then?" "I don't know." But we had to choose anyway, and I decided to go right. Soon we came to another fork. Where to now? Let's stick to the direction we chose before. We had been wandering for too long. We had neither strength nor the will left to move on. I was so terribly thirsty I was ready to lick the moisture off the walls. "Let's sit. Just a little? A bit?" "We can't. We must keep going. But just a minute." Masha begged in anguish. "Fine." She lowered her head onto my shoulder. The flashlight was blinking more and more often, so I decided to turn it off for now to save the battery. "This is it." Bye, Masha. I don't know how much time passed. I desperately wanted to sleep. My eyes were closing by themselves. How did we first meet? It was so long. It was so long way ago. It was a long time ago? Do you remember? I asked in a whisper. What? Masha's voice was trembling. How we met. Yes. She tried to laugh, but immediately began to cough. I'll sleep for a while, okay? Just for a while, or you'll sleep through the whole day again. Well, but you'll wake me up? Of course. I kissed her and closed my eyes. Oblivion was getting closer, but I didn't care. I was transported back in time to that very day. Huh. My whole body was aching. Perhaps my brain couldn't rest peacefully because it was distracted by thousands of signals from my nerve endings. Somehow I rose and woke up Masha. After all, we were planning to survive. How long have I been in this mine? Fork after fork, tunnel after tunnel. Masha was whispering something all the time. To the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. Seems that I won't be able to handle even one more turn. Suddenly the flashlight lighted a tight passage in the darkness, and soon we found ourselves in an open chamber. Look! Masha was pointing somewhere into the darkness. I flashed the light there and saw a neckerchief lying on the ground. This is not... No. Let's go! At last we got out of the labyrinth and found ourselves in a small room. There were broken bottles all over the floor, pipes stretched along the walls, and at the end of them were rusted valves. A mess of graffiti was scrawled all over the walls. At least it's a change of scenery, I sighed. The flashlight had almost died, and I had to shake it up every 10 seconds to slightly recover the battery. Exhausted, Masha dropped to the floor. We can't stop. I'm sure there's an exit somewhere here. How do you know? I looked at her. She obviously had no energy anymore. Masha was struggling with her exhaustion and could lose consciousness any second. I just know it. I smiled, trying to look encouraging. Well, if so. She leaned against the wall and stood up hardly. Sit here for a while. For now, I'll see what's further on. I'm afraid. Masha trembled. I'm not going far. She raised her eyes to me, full of hope, and nodded almost imperceptibly. I looked around and noticed a heavy iron door. My attempts to open it came to nothing. It was completely rusted shut. Ugh, wish that pipe was here now. But there was no other choice. I braced my leg on the wall and threw all my weight against the handle. My muscles bulged, my forehead was awash with sweat, my vision darkened, but the door didn't budge, just gave off a hollow rattle. It's alright, wait a second. Shouted over to Masha, gasping for breath. I need to find some kind of stick. I ran over to Masha, bent down and smiled. There's definitely an exit behind this door. She looked at me wearily. I ran out of the room and began to scour the mine in search of something suitable. The flashlight was about to die, and having blinked its last, it finally went out. I panicked and began to blunder around trying to find the way back. However, I kept running into walls and couldn't remember at all how I got here. Masha! Masha! I screamed, hoping that she'd hear me. Suddenly a sound came from behind me. A light appeared, and my shadow appeared on the ground, stretching far off into the darkness. I was rooted to the spot by fear. I heard a seemingly familiar voice. What's wrong, Semyon? Got lost? Oh boy. I slowly turned around and saw Lena holding a flaming torch in her hand. Her face was disfigured by an inhuman grin. I'm coming for you. I've come for you. This was the same Lena that I saw at the square last evening. Same as Olga's cabin. That was Lena, and at the same time, not Lena. This creature is more like those Ilanas. I'm coming for you. You, who are you? I squeezed out. It's Lena. Don't you recognize me? She burst into devilish laughter. You completely forgot about me while having fun with them. Words stuck in my throat. It's alright. There's nobody left now, just the two of us. So you did everything? Bingo! Not everything, of course. For a second her face became guilty, but then she grinned again. Slavia was first. She was always so annoying. She was Miss Reliability, diligent, hardworking, always everywhere, agreeing with everyone. Yuck! Boy, did she scream when I was tearing off her arms, huh? It's a pity you didn't get to see it at all. Her mouth began to tremble, her saliva dripped out of it, and her eyes rolled up. And then Alyssa. Everybody's annoying me. I don't need anyone. Now she's hanging peacefully alone on a tree. However, it wasn't easy to lift her up there. But it had much greater effect. How you all screamed, eh? Like pigs in a slaughterhouse. Lena's face was twisted by a grin of sick pleasure. Alright. Just that bitch Miku left to deal with, and then it's over. She produced a giant cleaver covered with blood from behind her back. Well, actually, it seemed to me that she was lost in thought. I don't know what that crap in the form of Yolana was. Her and the other pioneers weren't killed by me, but does it really matter now? She shook the torch and it flared out for a second. Wait here. I'll be quick. Her devilish laughter came from behind me. That means she went after Masha. I must do something quickly, but I have absolutely no idea which way to run. The darkness completely disoriented me. Screw it. I ran the way I assumed Lena went. After only a short way, I painfully smashed into a wall, turned around, trying to move slowly, but I stumbled over another obstacle, fell down and screamed in pain. Trying to rise, I realized that I couldn't put any weight on my left leg. Seems like I twisted it. I tried to crawl, but it worked out badly. The whole mine floor was covered with sharp stones, rusty nails, and broken boards. After only a short way, my arms were torn to bleeding pieces of meat, and my eyes couldn't be opened because of the dust and sand. I fumbled in my pockets and pulled out the matchbox. Tried to light a match with my shaking hands, but couldn't get them to light. Calm down, I muttered. At last, after the 5th try, the mine was lightened by a dim light. I quickly oriented myself and worked out which way I have to run. It seemed to me that only a few seconds passed before I found myself in the room where I'd left Masha. The last match went out, but I just had enough time to see Lena raising her cleaver above Masha. I rushed towards them screaming and dived forward. My hand suddenly collided with something. I fell to the ground and began smashing everything around me. Most of my punches didn't hit the mark, but then my hands met something soft. I heard a moan and dead silence set in. I rolled onto my back and started breathing heavily, inhaling the dry air greedily. Masha? I called. I heard quiet sobs. Are you still alive? Yes, she whispered. Did she get you? No. I began to fumble in the darkness and soon found the torch and a lighter. Well, that's fortunate. Shapeless shadows began to dance on the walls, and I saw Lena's body sprawled on the floor. She seemed to be alive. I was going to finish her. Don't. Masha crawled right over to me and grabbed my leg. But we can't just... You don't need to. Of course, Lena wasn't to blame for everything. But she's the devil incarnate. There's no way we can let a human like her, if she can still be called a human, live. When I looked at Masha, I realized that I can't. I just can't. Took up the cleaver from the floor and twisting it in my hands, I decided that it would make a perfect crowbar. Going over to the door, I jammed it into the wheel and pulled on it as hard as I could. Then it slipped and slashed my leg open and I bled to death. The door creaked and opened. Fresh air streamed into the room. We're saved. I returned to Masha, helped her to get up, and we left the room, leaving Lena laying unconscious. Beyond the door, there was a short corridor with a ladder at the end of it, which led up to a grating. I climbed up and pulled on it with all my strength. The grating fell down with a crash when I climbed out. I fell to the grass, exhausted, and looked around. Again, this square. Again, this camp. The bright red dawn was breaking in the east, burning the tops of a distant forest. The last stars winked at me, unaware of everything that had happened here in this hell. Masha rested her head on my shoulder and pointed up to the sky with a trembling hand. I wish we were there. We got out of the dungeon, nothing is over. Crowds of zombie Yolanas are wandering through the camp. An insane Yolana is lying underneath, and heaven knows how much more devilry we'll encounter here. I really want to sleep. I didn't know how to answer her, because I don't know where to run. Don't know where can we be safe. Don't know how to return to our world. Sleep. Patted Masha's head. Listen, this would make a great script for a film. She laughed out loud. I looked at her in horror. Masha was smiling, but her smile wasn't diabolical like one of Lena's. It was pure, honest, maybe even childish. All her exhaustion had gone away and her eyes were shining with a cheerful spark. What happened to you? I could hardly speak. Everything is fine. She lay down on my shoulder again. That was the last scene. Suddenly I felt my strength leaving me. My vision darkened, my conscience began to float away somewhere. I was lying in silence and only the sound of Masha's breath could be heard. Not the grasshoppers chirping, like all of them had died at last, but only Masha's steady breathing. And her smile. Huh? Eh? I struggled to open my eyes. Bright moonlight reflected on the water, cheerfully skipping on the waves. A light night breeze was blowing, and somewhere far away an owl was hooting. I looked at Masha, who peacefully slept nearby, covered by my shirt. What a dream. My mobile phone dimly showed the time, 3 a.m. We better go to bed, or tomorrow Olga will make us... I just decided to wake Masha up, but I suddenly noticed an open script and a pen next to her. Quickly went through several pages and was horrified. It was completely identical to what happened in my dream. Bile rose in my throat and my eyes darkened. Masha rolled over, opened her eyes and looked at me. You awake? Did you write this? I asked, thick-tongued. Yes, what's wrong? I didn't know how to answer. I just couldn't understand what was going on. You were sleeping so cutely that I didn't want to wake you. The grasshoppers were chirping so loudly, so She smiled. Wait, but we're here now? I mean, we're not pioneers. We're filming here and all that kind of stuff, aren't we? Yes, of course we are. Masha looked at me uncomprehendingly. Maybe I woke up, read what she wrote, and then fell asleep again? You're drenched with sweat. She fumbled in the pockets of the pioneer uniform laying next to her and gave me a handkerchief. Typical Russian handkerchief embroidered with colorful flowers. I took it and suddenly felt a surge of warmth, the same warmth you feel when someone dear to your heart gives you a present. Shall we go? Masha started to getting dressed. Yes, let's go. I barely stood up and went down to the river. Cold water revived me and that dream stopped seeming so real. After all, it was just a dream, wasn't it? On our way back, Masha held my hand and chattered about everything nonstop. We came to the square. I hope those creatures will let me sleep. I hope those creatures will let me sleep at least tonight, she said thoughtfully. Who? The grasshoppers. Ah, yes, that'd be great. Well, I'll go. She looked at me keenly, turned around, and was about to leave. Wait. I grabbed her hand, pulled her towards me, and kissed her hard. Because sometimes a dream is just a dream, and reality is reality. Wow. Every story has its beginning and its end. Every story has its own outline, synopsis, contents, key points, a prologue, and an epilogue. And there is no book which, if you read it again, would not reveal new details you didn't notice before. Every story has its beginning and its end. Almost every... Wow, well that was a crazy route. Was it just a dream? Did he somehow wake up, read her script, fall asleep again, and then dream it? I guess we'll never know. And that is Miku's only route. She doesn't have a good or bad route, it's just that one. So thanks very much for joining me. It was interesting, kind of weird, and slightly terrifying, but interesting. So next time we are moving on to Slavia's route. So I hope you'll join me for that. We will see you then. Take care.